Hello everyone, hope you are all fit and fine. Today we begin with our history session again, and this time we are going to deal with the last lesson, 18th century political formations. This lesson is your self-study lesson. Today we begin with part 1. Now let us see what we are going to cover in this particular lesson. So we are going to see who were the later Mughals and the crisis of the empire. Then we see how the new states emerged or the independent kingdoms that got separated from the Mughal empire, which were Awadh, Bengal and Hyderabad. After that, we straight away focus on the Marathas, Shivaji Raje Bhosle or Shivaji Maharaj as we all know about him, his war strategies and his administrative policies in short. And finally, we talk about the Peshwas, where we read about Balaji Vishwanath, Bajirao I, and we talk about the third battle of Panipat. So, this is what we are going to start with today. So, let's focus on who were the later Mughals. So, as we all know that the Mughal Empire was at the highest of its success and started facing a variety of crises towards the closing years of the 17th century. These were caused by a number of factors. So, we all have discussed the number of factors in the earlier lesson when we were dealing with the Mughal Empire. Emperor Aurangzeb had depleted the military and financial resources of his empire by fighting a long war in Deccan. So, as we all have read in the Mughal Empire lesson, we said that the number of Mansabdars, the Subadars, then their power, their financial conditions started becoming so strong that it was one of the reasons for the decline of our Mughal Empire. So that was one reason. The second reason that we discussed was like the peasants and the zamindars started rebelling in many parts of the northern and western India, which added up to these problems. Then a lot of revenue which was collected from the peasants and the artisans made them uh, earn very less. Though they were earning a good amount after selling their products, but everything was gone because they had to pay a lot of tax. So these were the three reasons that we have actually seen in the earlier lesson. Now here we get one more reason, that is Aurangzeb had used almost the military resources, the financial resources to keep his rule intact, to make his power long lasting in the Deccan. So a lot of things were lost. So after the death of Aurangzeb, many different rulers started coming up, but then they were not so capable as the earlier rulers. One of the ruler who was Bahadur Shah Zafar, he could rule for many years and he was one of the strongest rulers we can say after these six Mughal emperors that we have learned till now. So then even in the mid of this particular period, the economic and political crises were there. The ruler of Iran, who was Nadir Shah, he attacked and plundered the city of Delhi in 1739 and took away immense amount of wealth. So Nadir Shah, who was the ruler of Iran, he invaded Delhi and he tried to take away as much as wealth as he can. This invasion was followed by a series of plundering raids by the different Afghan rulers and one of the strongest ruler who was Ahmad Shah Abdali. He also invaded the Mughal Empire, generally in the northern sides, and it's believed that he invaded the northern India for 5 times between 1748 and 1761. So this is like what happened, how the Mughal Empire started declining. The last famous ruler, as we know, Aurangzeb, who passed away in the year 1707. The later rulers could not keep a hold on the empire, whereas the we can say the last ruler who could rule as an empire was Bahadur Shah Zafar. But later, as the Britishers entered during his rule, he was said to be the last ruler. Why? What happened after Britishers came to India? You're going to learn it the next year. So presently, you're going to remember the last ruler to rule the Indian subcontinent from the Mughal Empire was Bahadur Shah Zafar. Now here you can see one more name which tells you about Farooq Siyar. So Farooq Siyar, Alamgir II, Ahmad Shah, Shah Alam II. So these were the different rulers who were ruling the Mughal Empire before Bahadur Shah Zafar. But then they were either assassinated, they were made blind because they were the nobles and the ministers, they were not happy with the way they were ruling. Fine. So this is all about the later Mughals. Now let's focus upon how the new states started emerging. So let us move upon breaking up of the Mughal Empire, or we can say how the new states started emerging during this time period. So with the decline of the Mughal authorities and the invasions by Ahmad Shah Abdali, Nadir Shah, uh, there was a situation like unrest. So there was no actual powerful ruler who could guide the people. So the governors of the large provinces, the subadars, the great zamindars, they started consolidating their authority together, and finally the three states were divided like into the overlapping groups. So the few states which were divided or these provinces became as independent identities were Bengal, Awadh and Hyderabad. So Subadars, governors of these places, made their own small kingdoms as the independent kingdoms, but they were having some of the formal ties with the Mughal emperors while talking about the political things. But later, after few years, it so happened that even they established their own political identity as an independent identity. Later, even earlier, these Rajputs who enjoyed the Watan Jagirs, they even got those revenues collected from the Watans and all. So they also got their own Watans back. And finally, the third thing that happened was the independent states. Like there were different states which came under the rule of the Marathas, the Sikhs, the Jats, the Rajputs. So all of this started breaking up slowly. So it started disintegrating the power as the powers were decentralized in the Mughal Empire. The kingdom even was started into breaking up into small pieces. So these were the things what took place. Now let's see how these places started becoming different. So this is a map which tells us how the entire uh, Indian subcontinent broke up into pieces after the Mughals. So Awadh, Bengal, Hyderabad, even Mysore became an independent identity where Tipu Sultan was one of the important ruler. The Marathas, the entry of the Britishers, we had even the Rajputs, the Sikhs, and even the Ahoms and all. So they had their own small kingdoms spread all over the country. So let's read in detail about Hyderabad. So talking about Hyderabad, Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah, who was the governor of Deccan, is said to be the founder of the state of Hyderabad. He was a noble of the Mughal Empire and has served as the governor of the Deccan. He gathered power in his hands and established his control and became the actual ruler of the region. Asaf Jah was an intelligent man and skillfully ruled the state independently without declaring his independence. So he did not declare that it is an independent state, but yes, he was ruling the state as if it was an independent state. He, broke, he brought skilled soldiers and administrators. So this is an important part of the administration part. So he tried to bring skilled soldiers and administration from the northern part of India who welcomed the new opportunities in the south. So they got a good opportunity to serve the different people, and it was a good opportunity for them to learn and earn. He appointed different mansabdars and also granted jagirs. The Mughal emperor Muhammad Shah, who was so weak he could not control the Nizam. So Nizam was the whole and sole ruler of Hyderabad during that time. But then it is also said that Hyderabad was constantly engaged in the struggle against the Marathas to the west and with the independent Telugu warrior chiefs, Nayaks, which is one of the community in the plateau. The ambitions of Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah to control the rich textile producing areas of the Coromandel coast in the east were checked by the British, who were becoming increasingly powerful in that region. So, as the Britishers entered the Indian subcontinent, Nizam ul Mulk Asaf Jah's powers started becoming less. So, this is what you need to remember about Hyderabad. These are the important points that you can see. Now let's move on to Awadh. Awadh, an area in UP. So the Mughal ruler Muhammad Shah had appointed Burhan ul Mulk Sadat Khan as the governor of Awadh. He suppressed the zamindars who did not pay the revenue. He also streamlined the revenue system. Sadat Khan was very strong and he could suppress all the rebellions against him. He made Lucknow as his capital, and he was earlier appointed for a combined office for being the political head, the military head, as well as the finance minister. So he was actually carrying out the functions of a Subadar, Fauzdar, as well as a Diwan. Sadat Khan was succeeded by his son-in-law Safdar Jung. In 1754, Safdar Jung died and was succeeded by his son. The rulers of Awadh improved the financial condition of the government. They also had an efficient and organized army. They developed Lucknow as a major center of culture and art, and so it was the capital of Awadh. So I hope these points are clear to you. Please keep these key points in mind and also observe the map carefully. Now let's move on and go to Bengal. So Bengal gradually broke away from the Mughal control under Murshid Quli Khan, who was actually appointed as the deputy governor or the Naib. He was never a formal Subedar of that particular province. He seized all the powers and started to rule independently. He made Murshidabad as his capital. He brought about different changes and ordered major reassessment of the revenues of Bengal. So he first of all took care of the revenue assessment. So he revised the revenue system in Bengal. About his administration, he encouraged agriculture, trade, industry. There were also loans which were given to the poor farmers. And then what happened after Murshid Quli Khan? It was like the English East India Company started intervening in between. The English East India Company started establishing the powers. And then what happens later is all about the Blue Rebellion, how they started forcing our peasants to plant certain cash crops and all. That we will focus more in the next year's lessons. Now, Murshid Quli Khan was succeeded by Sujauddin in 1727. After him, we have Alivardi Khan, followed by Sirajud-Dawla, who became the rulers of Bengal. But finally, Bengal, which became quite prosperous during the rule of these different rulers, the English were attracted to it, as I said. Then, Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar established British control over the state of Bengal. Just have a quick glimpse of this Jagirdari system which was followed. So it was like the officers of the Mughal government received their salaries in two ways. One was like they received the cash from the state as we learnt it in the Mughal Empire, and second was like they had granted Jagirs. So whatever area land they were having, these officers, they would collect the revenue from there and it would be their own after paying the salaries to the soldiers. But here in Bengal, sometimes we hear about the Ijardari system, which is the revenue farming. Ijara here means the land and Ijardar means the leaseholder or the contractor or the revenue farmer. It was like the land was owned by some XYZ person, but these farmers would take it up as on rent or so and then have their farming done over there. So let us learn more about or differentiate between the Jagirdari system and Ijardari system for a better understanding. So what were the differences between the Jagirdari and the Ijaradari system? Here it is. In the Jagirdari system, it was like the state would fix the amount of revenue to be collected by the Jagirdars. So even if the Jagir belongs to that particular person, what amount is to be collected was fixed by the state or by the emperor, we can say here. But in the Ijaradari system, it was like the leaseholders had freedom to assess and collect the taxes from the peasants. So whoever owned that land or whoever had taken the land on rent to have certain crops grown. So to just give you an example, in when the East India Company started forcing our peasants to uh, we can say grow the indigo crops, what did they do? The different Englishmen came from Britain and they purchased certain lands or they took the lands on rent and then asked the farmers to plant indigo over there to earn a lot of profit. So these particular people were known as leaseholders or the contractors. They had freedom to assess their and collect the taxes from the peasants. Then the role of bankers and money lenders started increasing. Though the farmers were growing the cash crops, they were not benefited in turn. So they had to take loan from the money lenders or the bankers to fulfill their needs. So naturally what happened, this particular system started ruining the agricultural system in our country. So if these references you will need in the next year's lessons when we actually do all this indigo plantation and cash crops and so, because when we plant indigo, plant is sowed or a crop is taken, the land becomes barren, it starts losing the fertility, and so we say that it started ruining the agricultural system. The revenue farmers who rented the lands for short periods were concerned only to make maximum profit. So this system was followed only for great profits. The financial crisis accelerated the spread of revenue farming system. That is all from my side about this particular topic. It's an earnest request to each and every child. Please go through your textbook thoroughly, read it, hear the videos, go through the PPTs, and if any doubts, any queries, do feel free to ask during the sessions. So, till then, take care, bye, stay safe, stay healthy.